Hello, my name is Justin, and today I want to make a video on, some of the specifics as to, for example, why I made this channel, some of my objectives for the future, and, just sort of introducing myself as a person. I don't think I've really alluded to any of that. In my first couple of videos that were on, I had my first three videos, right? They were on, if I remember correctly, it was on production theory, it was on Marshall's Laws, and it was on labor and leisure, right? In those three videos, those were sort of essentially the lost files, right? Because essentially I mentioned I was a TA, right? Last semester in school I go to, I was a TA, right? I taught sections, I taught students. It was a really fun time, I really enjoy it. And those were sort of videos that were for them, like in preparation for their final that they were supposed to take, that from extenuating circumstances were never released, okay? And I figured, if they were never released and I'm just sort of sitting on them, I've been thinking about starting this YouTube thing. I've seen a lot of my friends with their YouTube channels and they're just posting things that they enjoy talking about. So I figured, why don't I do the same thing? I think that it's good to have a creative outlet in that regard. I think it's good to sort of document. One of the biggest reasons why I'm doing it is because I want to document a lot of the things I've learned over the years. And it's good to, talk about these things because then it sticks into your brain. Like if you're trying to learn about something, if you teach it to somebody else in like bits and pieces, it helps it like stick into your mind. So I really, I think that's a good method. And, I just really love, everything I talk about, I love. If I didn't have love for the game, I wouldn't talk about it, I think that it's one of those things where people have certain things in life where they're just naturally good at, or they're they enjoy doing. A lot of people enjoy doing music, right? A lot of people love to, be an artist, to draw. A lot of people, unfortunately, love to gamble. A lot of people love to, do good things and bad things, right? I don't do any of that. I don't gamble. I don't, I'm a horrible artist. If you've seen my handwriting in my videos, that should tell you enough about my, capabilities, to put it nicely. But I think I'm good at what I talk about on a general basis. I really do. I think that I'm more of an econ and stats guy, and some math here and there. I'm not really crazy at math, but I think it's, and everything I talk about has a practical use, right? It really does, and I really mean that. For example, I'll give you an example, right? The Central Bank of the United States, right? The Federal Reserve, right? They essentially manipulate what's called a federal funds rate, which is essentially an interest rate that banks charge each other to take out loans from each other, right? Now, if they would like to essentially model how them changing an interest rate by one unit will influence everything else, like for example, housing prices, or all sorts of loans, all sorts of micro transactions, right? How do you think they would do that, right? Right? They would do it by having what's called a predicted line of what are some of the outcomes based off of all sorts of factors. And they would put it in what's called a regression, right? So that's one use for a regression, right? And I know some of you are thinking, oh, well, I don't want to work for the Fed, right? And that's a fair point to make. I'll give you an example. I'll give you another example, right? The weather app that's currently on your phone right now, right? Where they essentially track, all sorts of data, and they say, in about 3 days, in your location, it's going to be like, for example, 56 degrees, right? How would they do that? They would say, okay, let's look at things like the relative humidity. Let's look at whether or not that location is near a body of water. Let's look at just the location itself, all sorts of factors, right? They would take all those things, right? And they would put it in what's called a regression, right? They would put it in a regression and they would say, okay, if we want to make a predicted line for what's going to be the weather, right? They would put it, they would essentially measure in a regression. So that would be another use. So there's a bunch of practical uses for what I talk about. It's probably like the things I talk about are used in ways that you see as such mundane tasks and day-to-day things, but they're there. And if you there's a bunch of other ways I could talk about too, but I'll just leave it for there. I'll leave it there for now. And so that's sort of my line of reasoning for why I started this channel. I'm going to make some more videos in the future. I really want to make a video. I'm not gonna like rank them to say, oh, I'm gonna make this next, and then it's not like an actual like chronological order. But there's gonna be a video about the spending problem in the U.S. There's gonna be a video about the gender pay gap. There's going to be a video on earnings, right? There's going to be another video on earnings. So that's sort of, where I'm coming from. And, I hope you enjoyed the channel. I hope you can find some use for it, because I'm going to talk about a lot of things that people in this country need to talk about, right? People in this country need to talk about earnings and where it comes from. And I really believe that. I really believe in everything I talk about. I wouldn't come to my loyal subscribers and talk about something if I didn't believe in it, if I didn't see the importance in it, if I didn't see why people should know this. So I want to put you guys on to, I want to give you guys the keys to the kingdom. That's what I'm trying to do with this channel, right? And so, yeah, I hope you guys enjoy, and I'll see you next time.